In the next got it problem, we have the same type of problem. We have attendance, and we want to know again when are they the same. So we're just going to practice this one more time by setting them equal. They're already in y equals, so the next thing I need to do is set them each equal to each other. It's almost like you're using substitution. Well, you are using substitution. You're setting the two values of y equal to each other. Okay. Now we're going to take everything over. So minus 36x minus 54 on both sides. 0 equals negative x squared plus 3x plus 10. I don't like that negative out front, so I'm going to divide everything by a negative 1. 0 is still 0, x squared becomes positive, 3 becomes negative, and 10 becomes negative. Now I'm going to try to factor. It really does factor well to minus 5 and plus 2. Now set each of those equal to 0, just like you learned in one of the sections before. X equals 5 and x equals negative 2. I hope you understand that day negative 2 does not make a lot of sense unless you can travel back in time. But x equals 5 does make sense. Now that means 5 days. That's when these two pools are the same. How can we figure out the attendance? By plugging it in. I would very much encourage you to plug it in the easy equation. So let's do that. The attendance will be 36 times 5 plus 54. So the attendance should be 234 people. So we'll make a nice therefore statement. On day 5, the attendant, each pool, let's make it kind of the same as above. Each pool had 234 people. Again, much easier than graphing that. Let's move on. Practice it a couple more times. Okay, substitution. Are they both y equals? Yes. If they aren't y equals, you'd have to make them. Let's set them equal to each other. X squared minus 6x plus 10 equals 4 minus x. I'm going to take everything to the left because that's where my x squared is. Minus 4 plus x minus 4 plus x. X squared minus 5x plus 6 is 0. You got to be good with your positives and negatives. This will factor. If you don't know how to factor, you got to use your quadratic formula. So x minus 3, x minus 2. If you don't remember how to do that, get out your old notes and study factoring. X equals, from this one, if you add 3 to both sides, x would equal 3. On this one, if you would add 2 to both sides, x equals 2. This one has 2 solutions, and it's not a word problem, so you can have both solutions. That means we're going to have to plug in 2 things. Okay? Let's choose our easier equation, 4 minus x, if you don't mind, and let's plug in 3 to begin with. I'm going to write 3 colon, that way you know that that's what I'm plugging in first. So y equals 4 minus 3 equals 1. Therefore, my point is 3, 1. Let's plug in 2 now. Y equals 4 minus 2, which equals 2. Therefore, my point is 2, 2. That means in both of these equations, if you plug in a 3, you get out a 1. And if you plug out in a 2, you get out a 2. Let's try it again. Hey, look at this one though. The first one is not y equals. Let's put a star by it and fix it. Add 30 to both sides. Y equals 12x plus 30. Now we're happy. Alright, so they're both in y equals. Let's set them equal to each other. Okay. Now the steps would say set it equal to 0. So I'm going to put everything on the right because that's where my x squared is. Okay, everything over here turns into a whopping 0. X squared minus x minus 42. Does this factor? If you're not sure, use the quadratic formula. I will factor it because I know it does factor. To x minus 7, x plus 6. You set each of these equal to 0, just like you did in your previous notes. X equals 7, x equals negative 6, but that's not enough. You got to plug those values in, pick the easier equation. I'm going to pick y equals 12x plus 30 because I think it's easier. So let's plug in 7. I'm going to do 7 with a colon so you know that's what I'm doing. Okay, 12 times 7 plus 30 is 114. Could you imagine graphing that one? Therefore, my point is 7, 114. And now let's plug in negative 6. 12 times negative 6 plus 30 is negative 42. Therefore, my point is negative 6, negative 42. Look at that. We did not have to use our quadratic formula at all. On problem 4, I want to teach you how to do this using your graphing calculator. So tomorrow when you come in, I would suggest to get your calculator and try it yourself. You hit y equals, clear out anything that's on there, type in your equation, negative x plus 5, negative x squared plus 4x plus 1. Hit zoom 6, that way you get a nice looking graph. Let's make sure that we see both places it crosses. Do you see that it crosses right here where I'm pointing? And it crosses right here where I'm pointing. That means there's going to be two answers. Here's how you find them. Okay? You hit second. Let's see if I can move this up. Ready? It's kind of hard to see with that light. You hit second, and then you hit this button that above says calc. You want to select number 5 where they intersect. And you see how it says first curve? It's blinking on my straight line. I hit enter. Now it's blinking on my parabola. Hit enter. Now it asks you to take a guess. So I'm going to scroll to my first point of intersection and hit enter. That answer is 1, 4. That was pretty easy. Now let's try the next one. You hit second calc. You select number 5. Is it blinking on the straight line? Hit enter. Is it blinking on the parabola? Hit enter. But this time scroll over to the other point where it's at and hit enter. That answer is 4, 1. Please do not make the mistake of thinking that they will always be the exact opposite of each other. But these are your two answers, and they just so happen to be opposites one of another. Let's try on your calculator one more time, and then we'll be all done. Okay, so we get our calculator, go to your y equals, clear out the two items that are in there, put in x squared minus 2, and put in negative x, go to second graph, hit number 5, we get a nice picture, it does cross twice, hit second calc, number 5, I guess we already did that, it's blinking on the parabola, hit enter. Now it's blinking on the straight line, hit enter. Go over to the intersection and hit enter. That answer is negative 2, 2. See how it crosses twice? That's nice. Now let's do the other one. Second calc, number 5. Enter, enter. Scroll over to the other point. Hit enter. 1, negative 1. Now what that means is if you plug in negative 2, you'll get out a 2 on both of them. And if you plug in a 1, you'll get out a negative 1 from both of them. Now let me ask you this question. How else could you have solved this? How else did you learn to solve today? Okay, number 1, you learned by graphing. Sometimes that's okay, but sometimes it's not so great. Number 2, you learned by substitution. Substitution is really nice because it helps with the numbers. Third, you learned by your calculator, which is really only good for checking, because you know I always check your work. Alright, I think that's it. If you have any questions on this lesson, go to your book, try some on the lesson check, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions when you come in tomorrow.